Hello and welcome to this week's vlog update. It's going to be a bit of an unusual one this time around because I figured, as I mentioned in previous updates, I will be guest speaking for the ASC Sydney Circle next week actually. I'll be co-facilitating a session called, let me just make sure I get this right, Managing Your Songwriting and Music Projects. And I'll be co-facilitating that with a country music artist here in Australia named Renee Jonas, who, like myself, has a professional background in project management, but is also, of course, a very successful artist. At her end, of course, I am a complete noob to, all of this. So the idea with the session is that there'll be sort of both ends of the spectrum in terms of managing songwriting and music projects. So, I will be speaking from the perspective of a noob, complete newcomer, no experience with releasing music before, and how I went about releasing my debut EP in March, and then, sort of sharing the tools and approaches and techniques and all of that I applied in my little adventure there. And then Renee is going to speak in the second half about her own experience in applying her project management background to her very successful career that she's built over decades as a country music artist in Australia. So that's going to be a really cool segment to hear about. And Elizabeth, the person who hosts the Sydney Circle, I think she had a really fantastic idea, sort of bringing in the two perspectives and seeing how the same tools and approaches and outlooks can be applied in very different contexts to ultimately the same sort of goal of putting music out in the world. So it's going to be a really cool session. I'm really excited about being able to talk a bit about my experience with that, and definitely looking forward to hearing Renee's take as well. And so that's going to be a really cool night next week. And in preparation for that, I have, of course, been preparing what I'm going to say and some draft slides that I have started putting together to sort of support and provide visuals around what I'm going to say. So I figured with today's update, why don't I just sort of pop up my plan so far on the screen. So I'm actually going to just quickly run through, like not actually go through the whole presentation that I'm going to deliver, but just quickly flick through the slides and sort of articulate my brain space around what I'm going to talk about for each slide. So without me rambling any further. So here is, of course, my title slide from Inspiration Out. That's just what I'm going to call my little segment of the evening. Managing a music project, idea through release. It kind of gives everybody an overview of what I'm going to be talking about for my portion. And, I'm sure Renee will also have some slides that she's going to speak to. I'm briefly going to go through the story behind my EP release, essentially, in 2020's lockdowns. I really started to get inspired and, motivated to revisit music from music that I discovered during the lockdowns. And to that end, towards the end of that year, once lockdowns here in Melbourne lifted, I started taking singing lessons and guitar lessons. And shortly thereafter began writing my first songs. Then, in early 2021, I decided to create a video journal, aka this vlog that you're looking at right now on YouTube, to track my progress and help myself stay accountable. Throughout 2021, I wrote my first songs and shortlisted 5 for the EP, which I further developed and prepared for studio recording. And then in late 2021, of course, I began recording, and then, Joel came on with the mixing and mastering. And in early 2022, so this year, I sort of finalized everything, the artwork and the materials, and sent them over to the aggregator for release in March, on March 18th, in fact. So I'll probably go into a bit more detail about that in the actual presentation, but maybe not a whole lot more. I mean, no one wants to hear too much detail about my story. And I've also got it, as you can see, a more in-depth summary in case people are interested in more details. I've got it summarized in this PDF that I've created. And I'll also have a number of other documents that I have created actually for a podcast that I did with Emily a few months back, and that's why I've got all of these documents ready to go. So you'll note it's from April. That's when I sat down with Em for 8 hours. It ended up being, and just talked about the EP process. So I'll recycle, I guess, those documents that I created for this presentation, and make those documents available to the attendees of the webinar here for ASC as well. So anyway, then I'll just sort of give an overview of the different steps that I usually take to execute a project that I undertake in general. So understanding it, planning it, tracking it, communicating it, and learning, and then planning next steps, in a nutshell. So to start with, I look at it from 3 angles really. Where do they fit? What do I want to do? And how much resourcing am I going to give to them? For my EP project specifically, these were the answers that I came up with for those 3 questions, those 3 facets that I look at. So fit with my priorities. I am really passionate about growing, always learning, and creative expression, and developing meaningful connections. Those were my priorities internally. Those are my drivers for pursuing the EP development and release. Specifically, what did I want to achieve? Well, I wanted to continue expanding my creative portfolio. So I've dabbled in a few different art forms over the years, and I think music and writing and bringing those together in this format was a really important and interesting sort of new avenue for me to explore. And of course, involved with that is developing skills, acquiring knowledge, and building new relationships with people who are involved in similar activities. Those were all important outcomes for me. And then, of course, investment of my resources, the time, the money, and also the brain space, because, we're all very busy people, and how much effort and focus was I going to be able to put into this to reach what I hope to achieve. And then sort of drilling down further into the steps, so identifying the key, I guess, milestones you could call these, making myself studio ready, as well as the songs, of course, recording, mixing, and mastering, that whole process, getting the music and artwork and, metadata ready to be released, and then, of course, the release itself. And then sort of contemporaneously with all of those are the other supporting activities, like, establishing and building online presences, sourcing products and services and platforms, developing supporting resources and marketing collateral to go along with all of these activities. And, at the end of the day, what is, if we want to use the term product, it is a product that I have put out, an EP, right? Then we'll go into my first sort of strategy document, I guess, here, which is the 1-pager overview of the basic workflow. And then there'll be 2 more documents that are even more of a workflow drill down to 2 specific elements of the release strategy, being promotion activities across different platforms that I used. And then the other document is a summary of my outreach, I guess, touch points, you could say. And then, of course, I want to underscore the importance of being able to adjust, the ability to be flexible. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's so important to put all of this information down, because it enhances one's own understanding of what's involved, the processes and the timings. And again, this is going to be available with the Dropbox files. And then, of course, at the end of the project, the wind down period, it's always very important, through along the way, not just at the end, but even, as the process is unfolding, being in touch with people, expressing gratitude and acknowledging, when they have offered support. That's hugely, hugely important for me personally. And I think it's very important for, any process like this. And then, of course, learning at the end, looking back, did I do what I was hoping to do when I set out? Was this a fulfilling project? Did I achieve what I wanted? And were the resources that I invested worth what I got out of it at the end of the day? I think those are important to bear in mind also. And then I'm already thinking about what I can do moving forward. So I'll use this as an example, this compositional tracker, which I will again include in the documents that I will make available to everybody in the Dropbox link, is a bit of an outdated version. This is from mid-April, where I only had about 20 songs that I've written. I've written a few more since then over the past few months. So it's my compositional tracker in real time now is probably more like 25, maybe getting close to 30 songs that I've written. So I've got, I guess, a bit of a back catalogue of material that I can further develop now. And so I'm currently exploring ideas and having sort of thought experiments about what I could do next in terms of music, and what I want to happen next, and where I want to go and areas I want to explore. So that's, I'll probably talk a bit less vaguely about that, but I don't know, maybe I'll still be pretty vague. And then, of course, the long awaited slide with the Dropbox link to the different files. And yeah, should be fun times. Over the coming week, there'll be some more changes that I'm probably going to add to the slides, and a few minor adjustments here and there. But I think what I'll do is later today, once I'm reasonably happy with how it's all looking, I'll send Elizabeth, the Sydney facilitator slash host slash coordinator, basically my equivalent for Sydney now that I'm the Melbourne coordinator. Yeah, Elizabeth is the Sydney equivalent. I'll send it through to Elizabeth my slide, including the Dropbox link, and let her know that she's welcome to sort of circulate those early to people who've registered in case they want to have a look before the session, and come up with any questions they might have around those materials or questions they want to ask on the night. I think that could be quite helpful for people to have those materials beforehand, to give them a bit of a primer and sort of get them in the headspace around what will be discussed. So yeah, that's what I'll do later today. And in the meantime, I guess I've got some refining to do. See you next week.